Welcome to Cornerstone. Tonight we have Stan Bajerski speaking on bad boy electrical panels. Certificates will go out tomorrow morning. If there's any questions, feel free to break in or just type on your chat box. And if you would, while you're not talking, just mute your microphone. I'll hand it over to Stan.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for attending this webinar. I just want to start it out by asking if there's anybody here attending tonight that is from Rhode Island. This is not was not approved by Rhode Island, and I think we had a lively discussion. Rhode Island, after January 15th or something, home inspectors are not going to be allowed to inspect the electrical system. So that's probably why they were turning down our electrical webinars outline. So tonight we're going to talk about panels that have been problematic since probably the day they were manufactured. You probably know about most of them. Maybe some of you don't. So we're going to go over all this. I've seen all of these. Certain areas of the country, they don't see many of them, but in Connecticut, I've seen just about every one of these and my fair share for sure. So we're going to talk about Federal Pacific Stab-Lok. That's probably the most famous bad boy electrical panel. But Zinsco, which is also Sylvania and GTE, is right behind them. A little bit more modern panel that's had a couple issues is Challenger, which was Sylvania, GTE, Eaton, and Cutler Hammer. The Pushmatic Bulldog, the Wadsworth, the split bus, and the fused system. So the average person has no idea what the electrical system in their home consists of, outside of realizing the lights go on and there's no power, or there is power at the electrical outlets. So it's taken for granted until there are problems. Unlike a roof leak that can be repaired or a heating system that needs service, an unsafe or outdated electrical system can have much more serious implications. This evening, we'll be discussing electrical panels that are viewed as the bad boys of the electrical world and what to do if we find them during a home inspection. There's still a debate about these panels in the electrician's world. There are several different problems with these systems. While some are panel problems, several are related to the circuit breakers, not the panel themselves. Also, keep in mind that there are electricians in the field that have mixed feelings about all of these specific panels and their safety concerns. We'll talk about that further on in the webinar. So, Federal Pacific Stab-Lok. I put this presentation together a couple of months ago, and a lot of this is information that I knew and a lot that I Googled to see if there was stuff I didn't know. And Federal Pacific had the most information that came up regarding the concerns about the panel. So the Federal Pacific Stab-Lok is public enemy number one in my eyes. Stab-Lok is a brand name of electrical circuit breakers. They have the red heads on them. There are some that are black. That was manufactured primarily by Federal Pacific Electric between 1950 and 1980. So they're pretty damn old right now and still out there. In June of '80, Reliance Electric, which had purchased FPE, reported to the United States Consumer Protection Commission that many FPE circuit breakers did not fully comply with Underwriters Laboratory Inc. requirements. Commission testing confirmed that these breakers failed certain UL calibration test requirements. Professional home inspectors now routinely recommend removing and replacing Stab-Lok breaker panels that remain in service, as they may pose a fire hazard. Keep this in mind. Most electrical panels, I mean, how long have you been in your house and how many times has a breaker tripped? Probably not a lot. So a lot of these panels just sit there doing their job, conveying the electricity to different parts of the house. If they've never had an overload situation, then we don't know if they're going to work or not. I would err on the side of caution and get rid of them, but we'll get to that. So it has been widely reported in news media and online that Stablock circuit breakers and panels do not meet the requirements of the National Electrical Code and Underwriters Laboratory and should be replaced. FPE and replacement brands of Stablock circuit breakers have a high defect rate. They do not provide the level of circuit protection required by the NEC. Homeowners should be alerted to this safety defect and advised to have it corrected. FPE Stablock circuit breaker panels should be replaced unless the occupants are informed and willing to live with the resulting increased risk of fire and injury. After the 1979 sale of Federal Pacific Electric to Reliance Electric, a unit of Exxon Corporation, Reliance reported to the U.S., we already discussed this, that the panels, the breakers and panels did not meet requirements published by the underwriters, even though the product bore a UL marking. The CPSC performed its own test, concluding commission testing confirmed that these breakers fail certain UL calibrations. After a 2-year investigation, 730 days, you can do a lot in 730 days, into whether these test failures would create a serious risk or injury to the consumers, the CPSC closed the investigation, citing a lack of budget to continue. So that's why they were never actually recalled 100%. And how do you track? They don't know who bought these things. They were usually electricians who put them in other houses and probably have no idea where they are right now. So who becomes the police? Us. The commission staff estimated that it would cost $7 million to gather the data necessary to assess fully whether these circuit breakers that are installed in homes present a risk to the public. I mean, what else you got to do that costs several million dollars? So the CPS urged consumers to remain vigilant and report breaker or equipment failure. All right. You know, a breaker failure is one thing, but a fire is another. This is totally ridiculous, and it still blows my mind that these things are still out there. Here's something that was released in '83, originally issued March 3rd, 1983, revised February 18th, 2011. The CPSC staff advises electricians, homeowners, home inspectors, and real estate agents to read and interpret the following press release carefully. The press release announces that the commission closed the matter without making a determination as to the safety of FPE circuit breakers or the accuracy of the manufacturer's position on the matter. I don't know how they get away with this kind of stuff, but this is revisited in February of 2018 because there was probably a lot of activity that was going on based on these panels. They still believe they have insufficient data to accept or refute the Reliance position. So we're going to bounce down a little bit. The commission advises consumers to take certain safety precautions with all circuit breakers and fuses. This is how they get around it. Consumers should know your electrical circuit, know which outlets and products are connected to each other. This is what they're telling homeowners to do. Never overload any electrical circuit by connecting too many products to the circuit. Be particularly careful not to connect several products that demand high current, such as heating appliances, to a low amperage circuit. Comply with local building codes in writing or adding electrical circuits. Make sure the wiring and devices used in the circuit are connected to a circuit breaker or fuse or of the proper size. Immediately disconnect any electrical products if problems develop. Have the product examined by a competent repair person. So, have you ever received that notice? Or I don't think anybody has. So you put it up someplace and you expect people to find it who don't even know that they may have a problematic panel. So the Stablock brand was discontinued and its maker FPE went through a succession of later owners. Reliance Electric, owned by Exxon. Exxon later sold the Reliance Electric to Rockwell, which sold the business to Baldor Electric. And Baldor was bought by ABB in 2011, and they're still out there these panels. Other companies began building stab block style breakers through the 1990s. So the replacement Federal Pacific Electric stab block circuit breaker is manufactured new by Connecticut Electric for use in stab block circuit breaker panels. Intertek ETL listing to UL standard 489 for US and Canada molded case circuit breakers. Now, we're supposed to have a visit from a local electrician, but he just couldn't line out the time with us tonight. He says that even though there are replacement breakers for these and other panels, they're not 100% compatible. So replacing the breakers, which was advised a lot, or I heard that it was always being advised, not the panel itself, is not a wise thing to do if you're doing that. That, to me, you need to recommend that the panel be replaced. That's my opinion. In 2012, the IEEE, which is the trusted voice for engineering, computing, and technology information around the globe, also did their own study and confirmed that fire hazards from FPE stab block equipment and called for the CPSC to take appropriate action to caution the industry and consumers. Is that the appropriate action, just to caution the industry and consumers? Are they afraid to say get them out of the houses? Are they afraid to go on local news and say, look at your panels, if there's red circuit breakers or it says stab block on it, let somebody know? I don't understand why we don't go that far. No official Federal Pacific electrical panel recall. When I see them, I recommend replacement. I explain to them why. I tell them to go online. You get all the information you need as to why they potentially can be a problem, and you make the decision. But that's my recommendation. So when I leave that house and they have that report, if anything happens after that, it's on them. So there's a development here in Milford. It was built in 1987. Those are just 3 of the buildings, but I think there's 6 or 8. Every unit in that complex has a Federal Pacific stab block panel. I did an inspection for a young girl who was buying a condo there. After I explained the situation, she said, I have a uncle who's a master electrician, and she called him to tell him that the panel was a Federal Pacific, and he told her to run. That's her running down the street. So I don't know if she bought that. I don't know if she worked out a deal, but he told her to, like, if she wasn't going to get it replaced, don't buy the unit. So the next public enemy number 2 is Zinsco. I've seen a bunch of these as well. Most of the time, you're going to see these colorful, thin line circuit breakers, which will be a dead giveaway. So Zinsco was a manufacturer of electrical distribution panels and circuit breakers founded by Emil Martin Zinsmeier and his son Martin Emil Zinsmeier in the early 1930s. In 1973, Martin Zinsmeier sold, everybody's finding out they got problems, they start selling their stuff off, sold Zinsco Electric Company to GTE Sylvania. During that ownership, the product line remained the same with new labeling and branding. While dropping the Magnatrip label in 78, the line changed names again and it was relabeled as Challenger. So that's quite a thread. And still, you're going to find these panels out there. I'm sure a lot of them have been changed out. 1981, GTE Sylvania divested itself of the electrical distribution business and sold off its product line and manufacturing facilities. So now it's the Challenger line, mostly manufactured in Jackson, Mississippi, was sold to a former officer of GTE who used the Challenger name as the name of his new company, Challenger Electric Equipment Corporation. So have you guys all seen or come across Stab Block and the Zinsco?
Stab Block more, Zinsco not so much.
Okay.
You go to Meriden, the Stab Block's everywhere.
Yeah, and there's the Pushmatics. They're quite a bit around here too. We'll get to them.
Yeah.
I've
So-
actually come across all of these.
What's that?
I've come across all of these that you.
Yeah, if you've been doing
Pointed
this
out.
long enough, you're going to come across all of these. And you know, you have to tread lightly, but it doesn't hurt to tell people that these panels have had problems, panels, breakers, whatever. You're protecting yourself, and you know my saying: if you cover your butt, you are covering your client's butt as well. So the copper shortage, this is a little different problem here. Copper shortage of the late 1960s was primarily caused by the U.S. government, which had huge contracts out, many of which were for air conditioning, requiring over 1 million new copper coils. This action depressed the market of available copper for other manufacturing needs and promoted the first real demand on aluminum non-metallic cable. When Zinsco changed to an aluminum bus, the aluminum selected was alloy 6061. First developed in 1935, 6061 is a good conductor, a hard aluminum, and still a popular alloy for welding today. But in 1961, another aluminum alloy was developed, 6101. This alloy had a higher tensile strength and is the best conductor for electrical use. It is the aluminum used in the current aluminum busing of panels and load centers. But alloy 6061, we're going back to that one, continue to be used both in wiring and electrical panels from 64 to 72. The 6061 aluminum wire and quick wire receptacles were being installed in over 2 million homes, particularly tract homes. The wire was inferior and the aluminum had tremendous expansion and contraction between power consumption and rest. Since power outlets were also conducted of dissimilar metals, the receptacles cause aluminum to oxide. Oxidation of aluminum creates aluminum oxide, which insulates rather than conducts. This caused numerous fires, outlet burnouts, and nearly 100 deaths as published by the NFPA. Because of this, aluminum wiring received a very bad reputation. So in 1972, aluminum was changed to an inferior product into a modern alloy, modern aluminum AA800 series alloy, which has high tensile strength, so it undergoes less expansion and contraction. So the whole story is that these panels had bad aluminum bus and parts in them. So many homes built or updated in the 1970s, particularly those in the western portion of the country, have electrical panels made by Zinsco. Unfortunately, these panels had several design flaws that create a serious electrical panel fire hazard, including insecure connections between breakers and bus bars, components made of aluminum that need to be replaced at 30 years, bus bars that corroded easily, breakers that melted into the bus bar, and moreover, Zinsco panels may continue to conduct electricity even when the breaker appears to be off. They were purchased by, guess who? GTE Sylvania 1973. So you want to check your electrical panels for the following names: Zinsco, Sylvania, GTE Sylvania, Sylvania Zinsco. You can also look for the bright red, blue, and green tabs on the individual breakers, but treat this as a rule of thumb because Zinsco electrical panels can also have black breakers. No official electrical panel recall replacement recommended. These are my recommendations. You guys can do what you want. You need to be comfortable when you come across one of these and the call that you make. So Challenger is now in that thread, right? Challenger became very popular around here. There's a 300 house development that went in the early to mid 90s. They're all Challenger panels. Not all Challenger panels are problematic, but in 73, GTE, same owner of Zinsco, introduced their own panel and breaker design. They named their product Challenger. Between 1980s and the 1990s, Challenger panels were installed in hundreds of thousands of homes. Because the Challenger panel is very similar in design to Zinsco, it caused some strong opinions from professionals. The companies at some point could have relabeled the Zinsco panel to pass it off as a Challenger. Over Challenger's short time in production, the company was sold 4 times. The final ownership was by Eaton Corporation before Challenger's discontinuation. Challenger panels are easily identified by the label on the latch on the outside of the panel door. Likewise, if it is still there, the chart on the inside of the door shows the label. Problems with Challenger panels. Challenger panels posed safety hazards very similar to Zinsco. The biggest concern for Challenger panels were their issue with overheating, in turn that can cause many other issues like fusing and or melting, corrosion, or actual fires. Occasionally they don't trip at all or just may take too long to trip. Now don't forget, all this information was accumulated from the internet. And that's why I had a chat with that electrician friend. Actually, Scott and I coached him. So he's a young fellow. It's got 8 guys working for him. He says they come across all these panels, and they always advise
update
that they be replaced. But they'll still work on them. But that's just how they handle it. So the Challenger panel recall. This had a recall. Affects specific models of Challenger electrical panels that were manufactured between 86 and 95. Panels are defective and can overheat, potentially causing a fire. The CPSC estimates there are over 2 million affected panels in the United States alone. In 2014, Eaton Cutler Hammer recalled 1,000 panels because their easily accessed components present a shock risk. So there was a product recall. Not the entire line, but certain models. So you may want to consider having further evaluation by a licensed electrician to determine if the panel is one of the models that was recalled. I don't know if I would want to get into that myself. I like passing serious stuff like this on to somebody else. So pass it down the line. I don't want the liability. Pushmatic. Jeff accompanied me at a home inspection yesterday, and we had one of these babies. So the realtor calls me up. My buyer's not going to be there. He says, Rondell knows that he has a Pushmatic panel. He goes, when he opened the panel, he'd never seen breakers like that. He went home and Googled it and got all kinds of information, said that it was a recall, and he wants the homeowners to replace it. And, you know, of course, without sticking my ass out too far, I can back most of that up. And there was never a recall on Pushmatic. But Pushmatic panels were popular from 1950 through 1980. During that time, Pushmatic system wasn't known to have any fire hazards, but it's now considered an outdated system and should be replaced. Be forewarned that you can still buy new Pushmatic components. However, these parts may not be compatible with the original Pushmatic electrical panel. Identifying a Pushmatic panel is relatively easy. Unlike most panels that have right to left switches, the Pushmatic has rectangular buttons that are pushed in to activate and deactivate the circuits. That breaker also, there's 2 methods of overload, and they only have one, so they're not the modern style. So when I come across them, as Jeff and I did yesterday, my report said they're outdated. I gave them a bunch of information about the breakers and that their parts are hard to get, and that in my opinion, it should be replaced. Although when I see these panels, I look for blistered, burned insulation on wires, scorching, things that can tell me right away if this panel had a problem, but they're not always there. I mean, if they had a significant problem, it could have been corrected already. So it's always, I think, error on the side of caution to recommend replacement of some of these. All of these. Wadsworth. Don't see a whole lot of these, and most of the time they're fused components. But Wadsworth panels are old electrical panels that date back to the 1918 to 1950. They are obsolete and do not meet today's safety standards. They may also have issues with aluminum or ungrounded wiring. Wadsworth panels should be upgraded to avoid potential hazards. So another panel that's outdated, and I also recommend that they be consider replacement. So here you can buy all these breakers on Amazon. They're not that expensive. Zinco, several different styles, Wadsworth, Stablock, Challenger. The homeowner can buy them right on Amazon and have them delivered the next day. They can return them. So why are we doing this? I'm totally amazed. Split bus system. Does everybody know what that is? Are you familiar with that? Have you seen these? So it's a electrical system with 2 bus bars, and basically the top 6 breakers have to be shut off to shut the panel down. So again, if you see them out there, they're functional. They don't have any really significant safety issues. They're just not. They're outdated. According to the National Electrical Code, a split bus panel must be capable of cutting off the home power with 6 throws due to not having its own main shut off switch. So haven't seen a whole lot of these, haven't seen one in a long time, but they're out there, and you can call it a functional system, but you should also let people know that, you know, there are better ways to handle your electrical system now. So they were popular in the 50s and 70s. In the 80s, they were quickly discontinued due to arising problems. This was because as technology improved, homes required more electricity. Then the split bus panel needed more room to supply other components and appliances. Electricians, handymen overloaded these panels by adding single pole breakers to the top bus bar, which caused overheating, arcing, and damage. So they were abused, basically. They weren't used right. Today, most split bus panels have to be repaired or replaced to fit the 6-throw rule mentioned above. In addition, these panels and breakers are simply too old and are at the end of their useful lives. So in some cases, insurance companies may require evaluation by a licensed electrician or replacement. That's the other thing that I think you're going to start seeing a lot more lately, that insurance companies are going to start getting involved in a couple different aspects of what we do. Roofing, also, and this is a topic coming up down the line, foam, conditioned space attics. They're starting not to like them for a bunch of reasons. So the electrical, you know, I've experienced it a lot. Few systems, people can't get insurance. They have to get, you know, a homeowner or somebody to commit that they'll have that system change the circuit breakers before closing or within 60 days. So it'll start creeping in more and more areas.
What I've been telling my customers at the end of the inspection is that I'm going to send them the report. I'm going to send the agent report with their permission, but not to send the report to their mortgage company or to the lender. It's just none of their business. And if they do ask for it, I tell my clients to politely tell them, what do you need? Let me get back to you, and then call the agent, because I'm getting so many requests to rewrite roofs and explain different crap because they send the report when I told them not to, and the insurance is kicking it back, mainly because of the roofs.
It's funny you say that, Jim. I just had a client that asked me he would pay me good money to rewrite and kind of exclude some of the stuff on there. And I said, no way, sorry. I'm not going to. Insurance.
Well, you got to stick to your guns. You know, you got to protect yourself and you got to protect your client. And, you know, in many different ways, the market is out of control right now. People buying houses without inspections, people buying things they don't even want because they're so desperate to buy a house. I don't know. It's a nutty world out there. So fuse systems, obviously we're all familiar with fuse systems and why they're not very popular. Although when you think about it, a fuse is going to blow. You know, the old time electricians say Fuses are better than breakers. Breakers can stick. We all know. We just talked about a bunch of potential problems. Fuses will blow, but fuses can be used in the wrong way as well. So that was the first thing the insurance company started to jump on. Not so much that they're fuse systems, but people can abuse them, can change the fuse size, and we fixed it. It doesn't blow anymore. That's right, because you overloaded the circuit. It's so fuse boxes were commonly installed in homes before the 1960s. Today, a majority of them have been replaced with circuit breaker electrical panels. Since fuses have to be replaced every time there is a blown fuse, many electricians upgraded recommended home owners install electrical panels. Lastly, fuses quickly received a bad rap with insurance companies since homeowners will replace fuses with sticks of copper, and I've seen it, larger than necessary fuses, pennies, in order to stop blowing fuses. Replacing fuses with oversized fuses or pieces of copper can quickly become hot and start a fire if the overload current continues to flow rather than shut off. So today it is difficult to obtain insurance with fuse boxes. I think we're seeing less and less of them because we just beat the crap out of them over the years. I did a 3-family in Stratford, and I found in the cartridge fuses copper. I'm looking at them, I'm going, what the hell? That's all copper. I pulled the main, and it was all copper. So I reported to the person who hired me. He didn't come, but his brother lived in the building, had young kids, and he paid me in cash and gave me $100 tip for finding that. But I think he dealt drugs myself. But he's very appreciative that I found that problem. But it's out there, and that's how fuse basically got a bad rap. So outdated, obviously recommend replacement. So what to report? So how an individual wants to report on these electrical systems is up to the individual, because as we know, home inspectors are a group of individuals. However, I think it would be safe to say recommended replacement for all but Challenger is best practice. For the Challenger panel, recommend further evaluation to determine if the panel is a model under recall would probably be the safe way to proceed, just to avoid, like we have to say, there's a discoloration or growth that could be mold, or these ceiling tiles may contain asbestos. We know they do, and we know that's mold, but so we always have to pick and choose our words very carefully just to keep ourselves out of, even if you're bullshitting on the phone with somebody, that's time, a waste of time and money, in my opinion. Holy crap, it's 7:33. The panels discussed in the presentation are all liabilities, even if they are functioning without problems. There is plenty of information to be gleaned from the web to back up recommendations for replacements. Protecting your client limits your liability as well. All these panels are still at large. The scary thing is that they're all out there, everything that we discussed today. And even with all this information at our disposal, they have never been recalled officially or unofficially. And again, that's a scary thing to me. So the Connecticut standards and most other standards, there's a purpose and a scope, right? The purpose of our regulations in Connecticut is to establish a minimum and uniform standard for the home inspector who provides or offers to provide a home inspection. To me, there should be a part of the standards that identify these specific types of electrical panels and how we should handle them if they want uniformity. The inspector shall inspect all readily accessible systems and components of the home and installed systems. The inspector shall report on those systems and components inspected which, in the professional opinion of the inspector, are significantly deficient or at the end of their useful lives. So some of these that are at the end of their service life, are they really? They're outdated, but are they at the end of their service life? Can we use that? At some point, all these electrical systems are going to be outdated. Does anybody have a useful life for an electrical system or a wire or a breaker? I don't know. I've never had anybody tell me. The inspector shall provide a reason why, if not self-evident, the systems or component is significantly deficient or near the end of its service life. So if we wanted to use unsafe as significantly deficient, then the information that we get from the internet can back that up. You know, of course, if we don't report, if we make an agreement with somebody not to actually report on one of the components, we have to put that in writing. So you have to review your standards and see if this even fits in. Like I said, Rhode Island said this is way beyond. Now we know why, but I think every home inspector should know which panels have the potential for safety problems, for fires, for things that we discussed here. I think it's kind of important. So Scott and I had this discussion a couple times on, even if it's not information that that this standards require, a lot of this stuff is really, you should know. So if your clients ask you a question, so you don't do a septic system, but if they ask you about a septic system as somebody else is inspecting it, you don't go, I don't know. You have some intelligent answer for them, even if you're not responsible for that septic system. And I think we all are better inspectors the more we know about these things, even if they're not within the scope of our inspection. So I say report it for everybody's sake. Now, here are a couple scenarios. If you do report or advise replacement, how do you think that goes down? So evaluation by a professional. This does not guarantee the panel will be changed out. Just like I told you, that young fellow that Scott and I used to coach, who has an 8-man company, you know, he may say, if somebody calls them in, it doesn't necessarily mean he may say it should be replaced, but it doesn't mean it's going to get replaced. Right? If it's not defective, if all circuit breakers are working, people are going to have in awe that it's a functional electrical system. So just because we say that does not mean it's that your client is going to get that panel replaced. I'm going to be interested to see if the panel I did yesterday gets replaced, to be honest with you. Real estate interference. So I used to play softball with a fellow. I did a couple inspections for him. I did an inspection in February. So I had to tell him I can't operate the air conditioning. You need to get some kind of assurance that it's going to operate in the springtime. He buys the house, he goes to turn it on in May, and it doesn't work. Now, it wasn't complete failure. It cost him $330 to get it repaired. But, you know, I said, Mark, didn't you ask for some kind of assurance? And he goes, yeah, but my realtor said that you were just covering your ass, and it's only a 17-year-old house, or the air conditioning is only 17 years old. It should be fine. Only 17 years old. So again, especially in this market, real estate people, there may be some that kind of go to bat for you, but they're going to make their life as easy as possible. Oh, we're not going to get that. It's a functional system. Or how many times have you said the roof is older and worn, it's got, you know, deteriorated shingles? What's the first question out of the listing agent's mouth? Is it leaking? And I would say, do you want it to? Because I'll just go up and stick my screwdriver through the roof if you want.
Or it hasn't rained in 6 months or 4 months, you know.
What's that?
Or it hasn't rained, you know.
So, you know, no matter what we say, what we do, what we find, it doesn't really guarantee that anything that we find is going to get fixed or compensated for. And then we have the dreaded waiving the inspection that has taken over the last couple of years. I think we're getting out of that a little bit. But imagine, even if you're buying a condo for $200,000, buying it without knowing what's going on,
or as is, or informational purposes only.
I'm good with that, because you know why? We work and they have the information, and they could always walk away.
Even with those terms, you know what? If it's something that's, you know, that's significant or it's a big problem, usually they'll try to work out something. It may not be perfect, but you know, it's better than nothing. Or they walk away.
But these are bad electrical panels or outdated electrical panels. So This is safety more than anything. This is not like an old water heater that can burst at any time. You clean that mess up, you put a new one in, $1,500, whatever. This could be, somewhat
Stan,
catastrophic.
how do you handle an agent standing there, because it happens almost every single time I inspect, when you find a double tap and then the agent goes, I've seen that on every single inspection. It's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. How do you handle that?
Here's what I say to them, Jim. My personal opinion is any opinions other than my own, just make sure you get it in writing, and that shuts them right down. Because if they're always over your shoulder, and they're always, the ones that know you fine, the ones that don't, that say something. I just tell my client, any opinions other than my own, just make sure you get it in writing, and that shuts them down. They shut up.
Another question I have on waiving the inspection, because I'm actually by chance doing 2 this week on post inspection. So they've already moved in. The agent gave them my name. They've closed. They moved in. They've been in for a couple of weeks. Now I'm coming in to do the inspection. Do you guys put any additional verbiage in your report? My worry is that on these post inspections, they sort of want to use it as a warranty, which it's not.
I think Stan will probably agree with me on this one. My only thing is if somebody's an electrician, and I've had, people say, oh, it's fine. And I tell them, listen, if you say it's fine, it's okay. You're the licensed electrician, plumber, whatever. Even with radon, me doing radon, when I have people saying, oh, he should do this, or that one time that Stan had a bulge on there, and it was just because the fan was cocked. But if these guys are licensed professionals and they're leaving receipts and they're warranting it, the problem is if we start getting in there and you go back for your walkthrough and you're finding stuff that's not done right, then it just gets it can be a real pain. And if I do it, I try to do a verbal thing with them. At least some of the stuff maybe I recommended is done. But if they
Scott, Jim's talking about, he's not talking about a walkthrough after a home inspection. He's talking about people bought the house.
They moved in
it, and now they want to know what condition it's in, and they now are going to.
What? I do the same report I did as if if they were buying it. But hey, listen, if they want to go back to the homeowner, I mean, they've already closed on it, so they're probably gonna, unless it's something that the seller hid or they knew about, and that would be up to the attorney to find out. And there's been times, I'll give you an example. I said that I believe this house could be it could have a septic in the back over on Ford Street, Stan, and you would think that's all city. And I said, I think there's, and they're like, no, the MLS says it, and the agent kept it, whatever. After he moved in, he found out that it was septic, and then he went back. The attorneys went back. I don't know how he did it, but he was able to get money to hook up to city sewer because there were some issues with the septic. But I mean, I just do the same inspection.
So you do the same inspection, but you're not putting any verbiage saying that this is a post inspection.
No, you could say, you're still, yes, it's going to be different because you're not saying prior to purchase or before closing, all that. So yes, it's going to be different, but it's, as far as my inspection, it's no different. But different page for that, because everything in there is pertaining to somebody purchasing it, and now they've already purchased it.
But Jim, you're saying they use it as a warranty against you?
That would be my worry. I mean, I know that a home inspection's not a guarantee or warranty. That's obvious. And I mean, I know my answer, but I'm just sort of throwing it out there. Like, I haven't seen a lot of these, and now all of a sudden I'm seeing more of them where people are nervous that they bought by waiving. Now we're coming in, and I go, okay, your heating system's 50 years old. I can't guarantee how long it's going to last. Then it breaks 2 weeks later.
Well, that's, what, they bought the house and they didn't,
right.
You're just informing them of what potentially could go wrong, or what they did, what they, most of the time it's like, oh shoot, I should have never waived the inspection. I should have had it done. But I think if anything, you're helping them. And if they have to deal with it, they're going to have to pay out of their pocket, unless, like in some situations, they can find out that they failed to see. We get this, you don't disclose it. They know about it. The inspection fails. And then they go in and don't disclose it. And if the attorney's good, if he's a good attorney, he may be able to find that information and go back after the owners. And that does happen, not a lot, but I know I've heard of it happening, and I know it's happening with me. But I wouldn't worry. I'm not worried. I
wouldn't worry too much. Just do your job, point the shit out. Everything's bad if I go in there. So panels that are 40 years old or older from these manufacturers are also starting to get pushback. Murray, Westinghouse, General Switch, Bryant. I've never seen, yes, I have seen General Switch, but Bryant and Murray are pretty big around here. I have a Murray, and it's older than that. So that begs the question again, is there a useful life for an electrical system? It's not, it's being used every day. The electricity is, but the breakers aren't. Electricity is just passing through them. I don't know if the breakers in my house are going to work when they need to. You don't in your house, so it's just something to think about because, the house that was old to me when I started in 89 is now freaking ancient, right? Because it's 35 years older. So, it's something that I think in our reports, we're probably, if we've written our caveats and disclaimers right, we can protect ourselves, insulate from all that. I think something that we have to do as home inspectors that's just as important as finding the problems is covering our butts with our reports and our language. Because people nowadays are really, they think that we got to find everything and that we're responsible for all the stuff that happens afterwards. And if you put it in writing and they go back and they look for that report and they find it and you have language in there, that'll stop a nuisance phone call. So just things to think about because we take a lot of stuff for granted, unfortunately, and some of that can bite us in the butt. Oh, thank you for attending. What time is it? What do you want to talk about in 15 minutes?
Stan, just seeing how you opened up 20 panels with me on that one job. Do you want to just, go over some of the things? I don't know. I apologize. Came from the doctors. I was late. Did you talk about when you opened the panel first thing? Did you talk about, some of the things, it's unfortunate though, as you do this longer and longer and you do more of these continuing education courses and everything, you find you start expanding that. I mean, if you look at our standards, you could probably write them on one sheet of paper and do an inspection, and they're ambiguous. And I think we tried to improve upon them and realize a lot of people said, "Hey, leave them the way they are. It'll help us if we have any problems." But I think it can hurt us too. But going back to when you were opening those 50 million panels, some of the things that you noticed, you noticed, you popped them up. We all looked, and I noticed them as well. If you could just touch on that, some of the things that you could see that maybe you might want to refer an electrician to come out.
Well, yeah. So the gist of this was the bad boy panels, the stuff that's defective, that older. But so Scott invited me graciously to join him on what was it, 16,000 square foot commercial?
Yeah, for 15,000.
And it was like a machine shop that fabricated plastic. So they had a bunch of different processes going on. And how many panels were there? Were there 9 or 10?
Yeah.
And every one was a sub panel because they all came from a single location. Basically, they're all fed from a single location. We took the covers off of every single panel, and commercial wiring is a bit different. There was a lot of 3-phase machinery, and there was basically a panel for machinery and a panel for the lights and outlets and stuff like that. And even in this environment, which had some chemicals and stuff going on, there was rust and corrosion in some of these panels. I think a lot of it. Look at as long as I've been doing this, and as much as I know about electricity, I'm not an electrician. So there's things in there that the different color wires, and you're used to seeing white neutrals and black, hot leads. Well, there was red wires and green wires going all over the place. And I think basically what we had to do is scale down and make sure we don't see corrosion. We didn't see any double taps. That's one thing I'll say, that those panels were pretty well wired. They had plenty of room for everything they needed. But we did write up a lot of the panels were missing screws, the doors were broken, things of that nature. We wrote all that up. but it's really hard to dive into something like that. I don't even think, I think I told this story before. You know, you can go on electrician and plumbing Facebook pages and ask a question and get 152 different answers. So their professions are not all on the same page. Ours is not. It was a lot of work going through all that electrical and keeping your eyes out for stuff that you know, broken outlets, stuff like that, loose conduit. Most of all of that was in conduit. I can say that I was fairly comfortable after 35 years to do that. But if somebody new in the business took that on, I think they'd be changing their underwear when they left that building.
I have one quick question. Like
Sure.
when you talked about the person who's looking at the condo, when I've come across a situation where they said, well, I can have my panel changed. But I said, how about the other 5 buildings that haven't changed their panels? So yours is not going to burn down, but the other house may.
True. I mean,
I always tell my clients, you might fix yours, but there's still a potential of the building burning down from somebody else.
yeah. You know, it.
You have to think twice.
My amazement that there hasn't. You would think, okay, well, if there's that many Federal Pacifics there, they had to have several fires. No, they didn't have to, because how do you know if there was ever an overload situation? We don't know. So it's kind of a hard sell, right? It's like, oh, that's a defective tire. Oh, it's got 30,000 miles on it. It hasn't blown yet. Okay, well, try the next 10. You know, and let me know if you make it. They don't believe you because it looks good. So
Yeah, even like
we
the aluminum
always
wires,
have to protect ourselves first.
You talk about the expansion. I've seen where the aluminum wires expanded so much that it starts arcing inside the lug underneath the breaker. That's
That's what I'm saying. Once you find something like that, it's an easy sell.
Yeah.
Right? Melted insulation, scorching. Oh, that's bad. Or when you're taking a screw out and the panel blows up and everybody sees it. But when there's nothing wrong, it's kind of a hard sell. And you know, realtors, if you know, is it leaking? Does it, you know, oh, it's worth 25, 27-year-old air conditioning, and it's 70 degrees outside, and they say it's working. When it's 95, this thing is going to barely cool the house. But on that day, they don't want to budge. So this is very similar. And I think you got to stick to your guns and you got to say something.
Stan, can you talk a little bit about, and I know it's happened to me probably more than once, and sometimes you look like an idiot if you don't catch it. Yeah, I've never had a problem where the panel is energized, but you just got to be aware that, hey, if there's a wire touching, you know, sometimes I'll just put my hand on backwards, and a lot of times I just open the panel. But there are times where I'll open a panel and by accident I trip a breaker. We've all tripped a breaker, right? Or sometimes there's a couple breakers off, and then you do that. You're not sure which ones you put on, and then you go upstairs and you check outlets, and you're like, oh, there's no power here, there's no power there. So I always just tell the rest of you guys, just be careful. You know, when you look at that panel, see which circuits are off. Pay attention to it, because when you pull that panel off and you trip the breaker off, and next thing you know, you're telling you're advising an electrician, you got no power here, no power there. Or you trip the GFI, you better find the GFI that you tripped. Or even if and there are times that we've tripped just so you know, and that's happened. A lot of these builders back in the day, they would use the one GFI by the panel, and then you go outside, you start tripping this GFI, and you can't find it, and the alarm system's plugged into it. You just got to make sure you try to find it, and if you can't find it, at least let the agent know that, hey, I don't know where it is, but I've had that happen, and I've had the breakers trip. So just be careful. And I'm sure Stan has had that happen before.
Well, the easy fix to that is to take a picture of the panel before you take the cover off. Then you know which breakers are off and which ones are on.
You can do that. You can do that. I just kind of look and I see which ones are on. But hey, if you got to take a picture, that's a great idea. You know, there's nothing wrong with that, because
well, I got that trick from an electrician friend of mine, because he said that happens all the time. You take a panel off and you trip one, and then you're like, oh crap, which one was tripped?
Right, and then you end up putting stuff on you shouldn't, and turn.
So I have a question. I mean, you kind of answered it in this last slide, but only once in my career have I found, and now, I mean, I've seen all these breakers. I've seen, PFEs, I've seen Zinskos, I've seen Bulldog Pushmatics, only once in my entire career have I come across a house in Connecticut that had a Colt firearms service panel.
Never seen it.
Never seen it.
And I Googled it, and Colt Firearms started making service panels in 1930, and they did it for about 10 years. But in all my research, I couldn't find anything about recalls or anything like that. Do you have any information on a Colt Firearms panel?
No, look it. I'm close to retirement, but I got to see one of these before I quit. I
Where
got.
was it?
I
Where
hope I
was,
see one.
where was it, Ray? Ryan?
I'd have to. I mean, this was a couple of years ago. I'd have to go back and look up the report. But
What area are you in? What area are you out of?
So I'm actually in Massachusetts, right on the border. I'm licensed for Massachusetts and Connecticut.
Yeah, I would love to see that.
Yeah,
Those are the only things that keep me going nowadays. You know, the unusual stuff, because it's just after 35 years, you get kind of.
Yeah, Google it. Google
Yeah, I will.
Colt Firearms service panels.
But
From what I see here, from what I'm seeing here, and I just did a quick search, it says that it's an outdated panel, brands like Zinsco and Federal Pacific. It was also known as a Bulldog electrical panel from the 1950s to the 1970s.
The Colt?
Yeah. The Colt firearm breakers have been known to trip and fail during overload or short circuit, risks of fires, aging. It's obsolete components, so basically they're just saying replace it. Sounds like a Federal Pacific.
Was anybody here today at the, I forgot who was speaking, the Levitron guy that spoke to us?
Yeah.
You know, with their new technology. So if that takes off, then the average panel that we see today is going to become obsolete. That's what I'm trying to say. So some of these are defective, but we also will be dealing with obsolete stuff. And I may not, and some of the other older guys may not, but that's what's coming down the line. So we got to stay sharp and prepared, in my opinion, for all that stuff. You know, I've knocked down a bunch of breakers, and sometimes nobody even knows. And one day there was a guy on a computer in the second floor, and he started yelling and screaming because it was on his circuit. And luckily, when I got the power back on, you know, he, I guess, had autosave or something, so he didn't lose his information. I've put screws back in, even though I look to make sure there's no wires, and I must have pinched it. And you know, it's just stuff that, no matter how diligent you are, that could happen.
We've all done inspections where something like that's happened, where you turn a switch, the switch breaks. You know, I mean, especially like whole house fans, I'll turn that knob on the wall and it'll just snap off right in my hand because the plastic's so. And people look at me like, "Well, you're going to fix that?" I'm like, "No, thank God we did the inspection because I did it and you didn't." You know. So I had that too, where you trip a breaker. I had a call from the renter of the house, called me up and he wanted $75 because he said Comcast had to come out and reboot his modem.
Well, you know, so I used to have a partner. It's been a long time since we kind of split, parted ways, but he tripped a breaker, and I don't know if he just walked out of the house without resetting it or couldn't find it. And it was a little old lady who got home and called an electrician, and he charged her $125 to reset the breaker. And she tried to get the money from my ex-partner. You know, so these are just things that come with the territory. No matter how hard you try to leave the house in the condition it was in, sometimes that stuff happens. Leave the heat on. It's 110 degrees in my house. Well, I don't think it's that hot, but I'm sorry. You know, but we have to be extra vigilant about electrical, but not think we know so much that we start calling out stuff that's just, you know, a little bit beyond what we do. That's my opinion. So, but these are the panels that we all know are bad. And, you know, I'm sure every one of you guys have a way to handle that in your report. I just thought, because it's starting to show up on Facebook groups too, to talk, because the new guys aren't seeing a lot of these. I thought it would be a good topic to go over again, just to refresh let everybody know we're all in the same boat. We see them. And they're probably still there. Everyone that we all saw is probably still out there. But
Any
I
other
have
questions?
I have another
Ryan.
question real quick.
Yep.
My understanding is that most single strand aluminum wiring has ceased being used since like 1974. And I still come across it whenever I see single strand aluminum. I always recommend evaluation and that, it's a potential fire hazard. But I recently had an electrician tell me, oh, it's fine, as long as the breaker's rated for aluminum. What's your opinion on that? Because like I said, as far as my research is concerned, everything that I've seen is that it could overload at either one of the connections. Even if it's not at the breaker end, at the other end, it could still be a fire hazard.
my opinion is the same as yours. I would call it out and get it off my list, because I wrote up that this could be a problem. If they bring in somebody, and this is the issue, it could be a plumber, it could be a roofer, that guy's nuts, this is fine. But your job was done. We can't hold these people's hands and beat them over the head until all these things get fixed or replaced. So if you put that in writing and then they have a problem, even after an electrician came out and told them, don't worry about it, you're safe. That's as much as we can do. We can advise them. That's my opinion. I'm not trying to influence anybody here. I've been doing this 35 years. This is the way I handle things. I've been pretty lucky not to have a lot of issues. The issues that I may get are stupid little things that I can put out over the phone. One of the things I try to do is kind of establishing a relationship with the people, because it's harder to get mad at somebody that you like than if you're just an asshole, run through a house and go, can I have my check and get out of there? So I'm prepared to deal with these kinds of things when they come up. It's in my report. Did you have somebody check it out? Yes, I did. What did he say? He said it was fine. What happened? Caught on fire. All right, then you better go to that guy. And unfortunately, sometimes those people come in and they don't document anything, receipt for a service call. So it's a tough business when you drill down into this kind of minutia that goes on afterward. So if you can walk away feeling good about what you did and the calls you made, I think that's the reward here. Whether people follow up on your stuff properly.
I think it's a good call, Ryan. I think I call it out too, the cold creep. That wire, from what I know, has to be bonded to the circuit breaker or to the outlet. I've softened a little bit on, 40 amp because it's less of a chance of that, but the 1520, that will definitely pull out. But Stan's exactly right. I'd rather call something out and be wrong and have it checked out by the licensed electrician than not. Just covers yourself.
When I first got in this business, I had a lot of confidence in the trades. I don't anymore.
Right.
Because I see that they're all over the place. There's the good, the bad, and the ugly in every profession. And I used to have confidence in the building departments, and I don't, because they water everything down. So I feel like we're not the top of the pay scale here. We just do our thing the way we're supposed to do it and move on.
A lot of the problems is the guy that's not the electrician. That's the general, the contractor, home improvement contractor that's doing electrical, plumbing. I mean, a lot of the houses we see when they were originally built are fine. It's all the remodeling, renovations, homeowner work, and that's why we're in business. And a lot of it is just a mess. And even electricians will come in and go, oh my God, and that's the stuff you got to deal with. And like I said, a lot of it is people that are unlicensed trying to do stuff that they shouldn't be doing. And
so we're at 8 o'clock. It's an hour. If there's not any questions, I'm going to end the webinar. And remember, we got August 20th. We have Precise LLC Building and Restoration Services, mold detection removal. I think it'll be very interesting. They not only do mold removal, but they're also contractors, so that if they disturb something, they can rebuild it and put it back the way it was. So they'll be giving that presentation August 20th. And again, we have our new logo on our website. You can put it on your website. Just says that you're a certified Cornerstone inspector. Just gives the little, gives your website, if you have one, or business card, a little bit more gravitas. So I'm going to be ending it now. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, guys.